I see that we're already recording. And I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement of the fact that we are on Kalapuya lands, traditional homelands of both the Ampinefu Band and the Chemafo Band of Kalapuya Indians. And that following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, these Kalapuya peoples were forcibly removed to the Coast Range to reservations. And today, their living descendants are still with us in helping steward these lands from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Rod and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. With that, I'm Zan Ojero, Chair of the Benton County Board of Commissioners, and we will proceed with introductions following and passing it to Nancy.
Hello, Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
If we could have those that are here with us today introduce themselves, that would be splendid. Perhaps Kate could start.
Good morning, Kate Portia, Courthouse, Benton County Economic Development Office.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Lesh, Director of Extended Learning at Linvent Community College.
Good morning, Marissa Rash, Public Information Officer, Community College.
Marissa, you were speaking at the same time as Alyssa, so if you might introduce yourself again, that'd be great.
My sincere apologies to Alyssa. Marissa, Director of the SBDC at Benton Community College.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Jesse, Deputy Director of Benton County Natural Area Parks and Events.
Thank you, Jesse.
Rich Spalford, Road Manager for Benton County.
Thank you, Rich.
Corey Wright, Venture Catalyst with Ring.
Morning, Corey. And we do have one caller on the telephone. Would you mind identifying yourself, please?
That's probably Rich again, because he's got to do the phone and the computer. They don't talk to each other.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Okay, with that, we will proceed to our agenda unless there are any announcements. Okay, comments from the public? Hearing none, I have no alterations to the agenda today. Are there any others? Nope. Okay. Then we will consider the agenda approved and move on into our work session. The first item on our agenda is discussion of our economic development funding for this 2021-23 biennium. And Kate.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Nice to see you today. I included a staff report in your packet, but I just wanted to walk through a couple items for you briefly on this to sort of set the table. And then, as you heard, we've got our partners from our two applicant organizations with us this morning so that they can answer any questions that you might have as you begin the discussion. So, as I indicated in the staff report, this is just a slightly different format for the contracts this year. The last biennium, we had structured it with a 2-year contract for our partner organizations. And for those folks listening, of course, this is pass-through funding that the county uses from their economic development funds to pay for partnerships and organizations that do economic development work through the broader parts of the county. This year, what we are suggesting is a 12-month contract with our partners, and that our office used this year to complete the work that was actually on the docket for last year, but got postponed due to COVID, of course. And that work, of course, is the kind of review of our sort of ecosystem as it looks in terms of how we support businesses, who the different partner organizations are, the roles they play, but not just organizations, what the needs are of businesses as they go through this life cycle of startup to functioning businesses that are needing to expand all the way to closing down. I really think that analysis is necessary. It's something we talked about in our last work plan. In that, I called it this continuity of care idea, which is this notion of what it looks like for businesses as they go through the process in Benton County and what their needs are. So again, we're suggesting a 1-year contract so that we can use this next year to complete that work of analysis, and that as we kind of head into the early part of 2022, have a better idea that we bring back to you all as policymakers, some suggestions around that, and then do a round of RFPs or RFQs, if appropriate, at that time to partner with and target the county's economic development funds to really meet those gaps that were identified in terms of the study. So that's why we're suggesting this slightly different format. So in terms of the proposals we received for this next year, for 21-22, we did have 2 proposals come in, one from our partners at RAIN, and Corey Wright is on the phone call for that today, and then also one from our partners at the Small Business Development Center, and you heard from Jeff and Marissa are both on the phone today from there as well. We put together a small review committee comprised of 5 members to take a look at the proposals, and did up a kind of a scoring grid or matrix so that all the proposals were being reviewed in the same way. With that, I put a summary of the findings of those reviewers into what is the second page of our staff report, which you'll find on electronic packet page 14 for those of you following along. And this is where I outline kind of just the summary of those findings. So first on the SBDC, all of the reviewers recommended funding the SBDC. Their current funding in the 1921 biennium was $25,500 a year, and we had 2 reviewers that suggested actually a modest increase in bumping up the SBDC to a $30,000 per year amount. There was one question that came through. One reviewer did have a question about sort of wanting to understand the specific services that Benton County is getting above and beyond maybe other counties, Lynn, that aren't paying in as much, and maybe some clarity around that. Then moving on to RAIN, all of the reviewers recommended funding RAIN's work that they do in the rural parts of Benton County. That is what Benton County paid for in this last biennium. Again, in the 1921 biennium, that amount was $25,000 per year, and they're requesting $25,750, which is just an indexed increase, which is something that Mary Otley and I had chatted about both for our contract and something that would be available to partners as well, with indexing increases, so we're not just kind of staying flat and then asking for a big increase at some point in the future. I will say though, RAIN did put in the possibility of funding additional work to be done in Corvallis proper. That was a part of their submission that they put in. 4 of the reviewers recommended not funding that portion at this time. Some suggesting things like we wait for that kind of broader review to be done to see if it's needed, things like that. But that wasn't a unanimous sentiment, so that's still an item that could be open for discussion with you all. So before I turn it over, I guess back to you, Dan, and then to the partners to answer any questions, I did want to say, reviewing, taking into consideration the feedback from the different reviewers, our ultimate recommendation was to fund the SBDC at the $30,000 amount, and that the EDO, our office, would work with the SBDC to figure out how to best target that additional funding to get the most bang for our buck, or perhaps a focus on Latinx businesses or something like that. It's kind of to be determined. I think some flexibility in that space would be helpful, as Marissa Schwartz has just started as their new director, and I think though we could find a way to focus those funds to really help our businesses that need it most. We recommend funding RAIN's request of the $25,750 for the rural parts of Benton County. And to continue to monitor that need in Corvallis, I think there could be a there. There's some moving parts with some of our other partners, which we'd like to really monitor closely, and then if something changes, we see a need to bring that back to you. The other item that I put in, while it's not a firm deal yet. We're waiting on the final. Maybe you know more, Zan, but of course we'd like to really continue to monitor the potential for the food hub and the funding that may be coming down from the Oregon legislature and seeing what that looks like. We're just in the very early stages of those conversations with partners, but I definitely think there's some potential for partnership there, and we're going to learn more as the year unfolds. With that, I think I wanted to just let you know next steps. The notion today, because this is a work session, is that you guys would have some discussion, give us some direction in broad brushstrokes. Then what we will do is take that sort of broad direction from today, put it into the contract, which will then be brought back on the 6th of July for ratification. And that will be both our contract with our strategic plan and then confirming the outside funding for partners. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can. And I know the partners would be happy to answer questions as well.
Okay, I would love to hear from each Corey and Marissa briefly, and then open it up to questions from the board and from Jeff as well. Thank you. Would SBDC like to start?
Yeah, sure, we can start. Is it okay if I get started, Commissioner?
Please.
So first of all, thank you for having us here today. We're extremely grateful to be partners with the Economic Development Office in Benton County in general. So thank you very much for the time. So just looking at the questions that Kate had talked about there around what specific services in addition, or rather that go above and beyond in Benton County that maybe aren't present in other places and spaces. And so pre-pandemic, we had an advisor do drop-in office hours at the Foundry on a regular basis. And post-pandemic, I don't know what's going to happen, but what I can say is that conversation will be open and we will look at that. In addition, Marissa and I have been talking about beta testing other locations in Corvallis, which is not happening anywhere, and speaking specifically to having drop-in office hours. So we're looking at the library as a possibility, other successful local businesses from a networking perspective, and in addition, getting advising. And then we're also looking at the Benton Center as a possibility, which isn't being done right now. Additionally, 2 advisors spend the majority of their time in Benton County inside of their workflow. And additionally, we're hiring right now, we actually have hired a Spanish-speaking advisor to conduct outreach to the Latinx and Hispanic community. Vanessa is moving on for another opportunity, and so Marissa will be hiring for that position in the next couple of weeks. And that position will spend quite a bit of time in Benton County as well. Additionally, with the funding, we are going to create a scholarship fund, or rather use some of the funding for scholarships. Kate alluded to this a little bit, and we'll work with Kate. Marissa will work with Kate's office to, better distinguish exactly where those monies should go. But those monies will be able to increase access to very important training such as SBM, Small Business Management 1 and 2, and foundations of business, and then fundamentals of business as well. And then there's one other one that Marissa and I were talking about yesterday in regard to tailored training specifically to Benton County businesses. And Marissa, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a conversation Kate, Portia, and I were having the other day when she said, hey, we've had a lot of businesses coming to us wanting to know how to better talk with their commercial landlords. We have tremendous expertise in that on our team, and we're already developing classes around that. So moving forward, looking at these fundings, we'd love to really work with the team here and with Benton County to understand what are the specific business needs that the entrepreneurs are facing and be able to create some customized classes around that.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. So commissioners, that's really, those are some of the distinguishing factors that we know we can put in play this next year, and we're really excited about that in Benton County. And Marissa and I are here, obviously, for any other questions you might have. So thank you again for your time, and thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Corey, let's hear from you, and then we'll open up for questions.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Thanks, Kate, for inviting us to be here. Thanks for considering funding us again another year. Really appreciate it. It's been great to partner with you guys, with the county over the last, I think it's been like 4 years now. And also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but just a heads up that Linn County also just came back on board with a 2-year MOU at $30,000 a year. So they're also sort of contributing to building up the entire ecosystem. As you know, we've been focusing a lot on the rural entrepreneurs in Benton County, which is important, and as we were directed to do. But I'd like to just mention that out of the 114 entrepreneurs and business owners that we've sort of been assisting over the last couple of years, 68 are from Corvallis region, and every month I get requests from Corvallis entrepreneurs wanting help and assistance in raising funds, putting together business plans, getting connected to partners, etc. Our Moneymaker programs, our sales and marketing accelerator programs, all of those are constantly attended by a lot of Corvallis entrepreneurs. And so the reason we had put in that additional request, right, was to hire what we like to call an entrepreneur in community. It's a new model we've been rolling out in Linn County that works really well, where 100% of the additional funding goes towards a local, in this case, Corvallis entrepreneur, to allow them to assist the venture catalysts, which, by the way, we're bringing on a new one on board to replace me, so I'll make sure you're all introduced to them soon. But basically, this EIC, or Entrepreneur Community, would assist them specifically for the Corvallis region in hosting events, workshops, partnering with the SBDC, making connections happen, all of that, because I totally agree it's always good to analyze what resources are needed and what aren't. But from my perspective as, I guess, the entrepreneur and venture capitalist in the community, we do see a lot of demand for someone like this to support Corvallis entrepreneurs, and so that was, I guess, the main reason we put that request in. So just wanted to provide that additional clarification and say that, yeah, excited. There's a lot of entrepreneurs asking for help. It'll be awesome to provide a little more support to the ones in Corvallis as well.
Okay. Nancy, questions?
Not really any specific questions. I have some, comments when I'm ready to make a motion. But
Okay. Jeff and Marissa, you did a good job explaining why or what we get as Benton County from these funds in terms of the attention and time spent from people here and the scholarship component as well. And I know that scholarship component can be very important because there are times when some of these folks that are really just in that very initial startup or idea mode don't have the funds to be able to participate. So thank you. Otherwise, is the work that you do here in Benton County pretty much the same as you would perform in Linn County, for instance, or what other contrasts might there be?
Well, I think that the model is very similar, and we've been in Benton County, like Linn County, for over 30 years, so long history attached to the college, really deep leadership, and then the state network too, so we have leadership there. Those are some of the distinguishing, factors. However, I will say that with Marissa on board, the SBDC was without a full-time director for 15, 16 months, and so I took up that mantle the best that I could. But what I'm mostly excited about is having Marissa on board, fully engaged every day, and creating strategic plans for this next year. So it is a transition year for the SBDC, and all that means is that we will have new activities for Benton County, those of which have been described. And then what we can look forward to the following year is even more service opportunities, because after transition year, Marissa's first year, getting the team aligned, getting them aligned with the department and the college, we'll have more and more services available to Benton County to commissioners.
Okay, I have a couple of follow-up questions. One is, do you have a sense for what specific programming you might want to provide to the Latinx community, or is that something that you will be focusing on pretty heavily as you plan over the next year?
Oh, definitely. Marissa and I have spent quite a bit of time already and heavily engaged, not just in conversations with her and I, but with Vanessa, who is now again leaving, again, we will fill that position rapidly. But also with the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusive officers here on campus, engaged with them, and then at the state network as well. So there's 3 different layers of leadership there and strategic thinking for this next year, and then for the years to come. And Marissa, I don't know if you want to say anything else to that. That's a really good question by Commissioner Zen.
Absolutely. We found that it's vital that we not only think about what businesses need, but what the specific community wants. And so we're taking all of the programs and we'll be reworking them for the Latinx community based on what are their specific needs and how do their community both best absorb information. For example, we've definitely found that a class in basic finances and accounting is something the community has been asking us for over and over again. So we are taking the basic principles, but we are reworking them with leaders in the community that we know to be able to address and have accessible information. On top of that, building out resources and building out relationships with some of the obvious and less obvious community members, everywhere from chambers that provide invaluable services to local churches, even restaurants that might be a hub and leaders in the local community, and trying to create a resource guide and organization so that we can develop a healthy ecosystem around that.
Sounds great. I'm excited about that. The other piece was that you alluded to the fact that financially speaking, things were not as well organized and clear as they could be within the SBDC, and that you're on the road to more clarity. So might you say a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question, Commissioner Zan. Yes, so the SBDC suffered from a couple of years of fiscal mismanagement that preceded the interim director and the current director, Marissa Schwartz. And Marissa and I have already been working, and actually every day she's been on the job, and she'll shake her head right now, every day that she's been on the job, we've been talking budget. So it has not escaped, and there is already a 2-year implementation plan for this first year of transition with Marissa in her job, her first year. And then I went and asked her to go out to year 2. And so what we can see already with putting the strategy behind this fiscal model is that by the end of year 2, we will almost be solvent and break even already. And I fully expect that the year thereafter, we will actually be in the black. And so, yes, it's being addressed, Commissioner, as your question, and we're on top of it.
We can't hear you, Zan.
There we go.
Sorry. I just was speaking about the interference from another microphone that was on, and hopefully that mic is now off so that we don't get that background noise. And thank you. So, Corey, I'm going to turn to you and ask you about your programs. You have served many people, have had lots of different activities. I've heard good things about the networking and the courses that you offer. People have found it very, I think what you offer very inspiring and helpful. And I want to ask a little bit more about the Corvallis piece and whether a delay in funding that element will significantly impair your ability to do the work, or whether that would be, whether taking the time to do this kind of life cycle analysis of our local businesses to assess needs would be a good strategy and might indeed help focus your efforts more.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, there's always multiple thoughts to this. However, what I would say is that we tend to work on the very early side of things when it comes to a business life cycle, right? Often these people still have ideas. They're still thinking about it. They just started. They don't have a downtown location per se. They're not people that you can easily find, but we draw them out of the woodwork and then support them so that they can actually, have that downtown location or wherever they need to go. And so because our partners in rural cities have really requested that the funding for our new rural venture catalyst be very much focused on the rural areas, it is going to mean that we're going to have to, we hate to say no, but provide less attention to a lot of Corvallis entrepreneurs that like to use our services, that like to meet with us. The OSU Advantage Accelerator will send clients over to me fairly often. Like I met with one just a couple days ago. People find us on the website. And so obviously something is better than nothing. So if it has to be 6 months, it has to be 6 months. But the need is now, I would say, and I think there's a lot that could be done that hasn't been done in Corvallis for a while that would be really great for the Corvallis startup community. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but essentially, yes, it means we'll not be able to provide as much services to a very significant portion of Benton County.
Okay. Thank you for that. Nancy, do you have follow-up questions for Corey?
No, thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, and given the timing right now with the pandemic, it's hard to know whether any money is better than no money or whether spending wisely is better. And I do know that given the ARPA dollars as well, we're likely to have more funds to spend on some of these economic support issues, and we'd want to do it as wisely as we can, so that it really does make a difference in the community. So that's where I am at this point. Nancy, you said you had a couple more comments and perhaps even a motion.
Sure.
I think at this point we just want direction. I don't know that we need formal motion, but...
No, there was a motion in the packet to bring it back to the July 6th, but...
Okay, yes.
I don't have to make that?
No, we could go ahead and do that.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank SBDC and RAIN for the good work that you do in our community, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to support each other. I do like the process that was followed by our Economic Development Office. It sounds like the review work group had good representation, and they thoroughly vetted the applications. I did read through the review criteria. Seems like they made some pretty sound decisions. And I think I agree that this is also a good time to review the ED funding and just see what gaps we have, or if there's any opportunity for us to change things. So for all those reasons, I am willing to support the recommendation in the staff report. And I will move to bring this item back for approval at the July 6, 2021 board meeting.
Thank you. I will second that motion and say, and then it's open for discussion among the two of us at this point. I'll say that I'm quite interested in ensuring that our Corvallis folks also have access to support and services. And so I do look forward to the further investigation by the Economic Development Office in this assessment and getting it done so that we can move forward and not have too much of a gap. Because I know how difficult it can be to say no to someone that really needs your help. So with that, I really appreciate Corey, Jeff, and Marissa, you taking the time to join us today and have this discussion. And I'm grateful for the process that the Economic Development Office used. I think it's very helpful. And look forward to working with you over the next year, and hopefully for longer than that into the future.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners, very much. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. We will now move on to item 4.2. Whoop.
Ben, there's a motion on the table. Should I vote on it or should I withdraw it?
We should do that. Sorry. Thank you. With a motion on the table to move the Economic Development Office plan forward to the July 6th board meeting, all in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. With two of us, it gets very confusing in terms of the rhythm, but thank you. I appreciate that reminder. Okay, next up is item 4.2, which is our annual, thank you, Kate, our annual update from the Bureau of Land Management and the Siuslaw National Forest. And I believe there's been a little bit of a change up in who's here with us today, but if you all would join us on camera, we will hear from leadership of both the Forest Service and the Siuslaw and BLM district. And if you would please introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Well, I'll jump in here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hey. It's been a while, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. For everybody else, I'm Scott Snedeker. I'm the Assistant Field Manager for the Mary's Peak Field Office. I was the fish biologist in Mary's Peak for a number of years, and that's where I worked with San Jose for a while on a number of projects. So just as an FYI, Paul Tigan who is normally our field manager for the Mary's Peak, has accepted a detail to the DM position for the Northwest Oregon District. And he had a conflict today with the state leadership team, and so he asked me to stand in his place.
Thank you. Welcome. It's good to see you. And from the Siuslaw, we have Michelle Holman.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, good morning. My name is Michelle Holman, and I am the District Ranger for the Central Coast Ranger District and the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area. So Benton County falls within my Ranger District. Robert Sanchez is normally the representative for the Forest Service, and he's on a detail to the Washington office. And Kevin Larkin, who is acting behind Robert, had a conflict today, and so they asked me to jump in, and I'm certainly happy to do that.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a busy time, lots of musical chairs in any new administration, and so I know that it can be challenging. And we really appreciate your coming to join us today, and we look forward to hearing from you what issues are facing you on our federal lands, and I think that what's probably most on our minds is fire and emergency planning as well. And if Pat Malone were with us, I'm sure he would have lots of questions for you, and he'll look forward to listening to the recording later. So with that, I don't know which of you would like to start us off, but the floor is yours.
Well, I can jump in, Scott, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
He gave me 2 thumbs up. So, yes, our fire program is actually on top of my notes here. So, of course, it's in everyone's mind. I looked at we have predictive services for our fire outlook for the year, and our indices for the Ranger District are, and particularly in some places closer to the coast, are all very, very high, which is not great. It means our fuels are very dry. So we have a combined zoned fire program on the Siuslaw that covers both Evo and the Central Coast. We just went through a week of our annual training and our preparedness review, and so I feel like we're as prepared as we can be right now. We've done some sand table exercises with the local EMS in at least Lincoln County. I think we are as prepared as we can be right now. From that standpoint, we do work pretty close with our ODF partners. We have moved an engine down from Hebo to Waldport, and so anything in Benton County would come out of Waldport. I think that our biggest concern in Benton County is Mary's Peak. We get lightning on the peak every year, and typically they are fairly small fires, basically hitting a tree or a snag and waiting for that to fall so we can put a line around it and monitor it and make sure it goes out. That's the kind of fires we typically have on Mary's Peak, but I don't know that we'll get the typical fires this year, and so we understand that, and we're like I said, we're as prepared as we can be right now. Do you have any questions about that, or how we work or respond or anything like that?
I think that I know that in some boards there would you'd be peppered with questions about response and why don't you respond faster and why isn't everything a top priority immediately? But no, I don't have those questions per se, but I do know that if there are multiple fires going on at the same time, that we are not likely to be as high a priority because of the different types of resources and the fact that we don't have as many structures in proximity. Although it depends on where on Mary's Peak anything strikes, that I think is probably one of my concerns is that issue of multiple fires at the same time and how we would respond in that case.
Yeah, and so we are part of the Northwest Oregon Interagency Fire Management Program, and so that includes the Northwest Oregon BLM, the Siskiyou National Forest, and the Willamette National Forest, and so we get dispatched and we get support from that organization, and so we're all one organization that can pull from each other. And so when we have a bunch of smaller fires, we have the capacity to jump onto those relatively quickly. And you're right, Commissioner, if we have a lot of very large fires in the region, depending on where it is, we might not be the highest priority. Those priorities get assigned out of our regional office, and it has to do with location to homes and all that kind of stuff. And so you're right, we don't have a lot of ability to change that, but we do have a lot of we work really well with not a lot. The fires I was on last year, we were pretty low in the totem pole, and we were able to really just come up with different kinds of tools to fight that fire. So, yeah.
Understood. I think the aerial resources are the ones that are always, of course, really sought after, and they can end up in California or Colorado.
Yeah.
And yes, out on the coast, you all were lucky. The community really responded. It was all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Any other issues that you'd like to highlight from the perspective of the Siskiyou law, aside from fire?
Yeah, I want to talk about Mary's Peak a little bit. I think it's really important to Benton County, and it's a place that is near and dear to everyone's heart. We work with Mary's Peak Alliance, and they received a very large endowment, I guess you'd call it, to work on Mary's Peak in terms of interpretation. And so we are working with Mary's Peak Alliance to create an interpretation plan for the peak. We also have the ability to, we now have the Great American Outdoors Act, which provides a potential funding source for improvement of our recreation sites. And so with that interpretation plan and with some design work from our engineers, we're hoping to submit a proposal to upgrade the sites at Mary's Peak, you know, the existing facilities and parking lot improvements, some traffic control design on top of the peak, you know, at the top parking lot to protect resources and try to keep people out of the meadows, motorized vehicles out of the meadows like we get every year, and then repaving the parking lots and the road up there. And so once we get this interp plan, we'll create a proposal and submit it to the Great American Outdoors Act requests and potentially get some money to do that. So that's pretty exciting for us. But right now, the Great American Outdoors Act proposals are like 3 or 4 years out in terms of money and how we're working forward. And so that might be, it might take us several years, but we're working on it and we're really excited about that potential. Those sites really need a facelift and some help. So we're really excited about that. And then, you know, there's the BPA has a communication site on top of Mary's Peak, and they've been working on EA for a long time, and it's kind of coming to an end, and we expect probably to have a decision on that this fall. Still working through going to the response to comments, but I think the BPA is on track to do that this fall, and then we will write a decision notice off of their EA and adopt it and go through that process. So I think that's Mary's Peak. That's kind of the biggest piece of land that has issues for us in Benton County. And then the other thing is, you know, in terms of timber operations, we don't have any active timber sales in Benton County right now. So that, and just to go back to fire a little bit, one of our concerns on fire is ignition. We don't get a lot of huge amounts of lightning storms on the Coast Range, and so our homeless community camps are a big source of concern over potential ignition for wildland fire, and so and we do have some, and we get more every day. So, and I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody, but we're aware of that, and then it's a concern. Yeah.
So,
and I think
in terms of the homeless encampments that you're seeing, and I suspect that that's your rangers and other field staff, like the fish crews and such, as well as our forest deputy for the sheriff's office, anyone would encounter folks. Are they mostly people that are living out of vehicles and campers, or rough camping in tents? And has it become more widespread?
I would say that we have both, and it tends to start with 1 or 2 people, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And it's difficult for us to, we've been having a lot of discussions with within the agency, and really what we need to do is reach out to the counties and figure out how to approach. It doesn't do us a lot of good to move them off of national forests because they just go somewhere else. And so, you know, how are we, you know, what are they the priority in terms of trying to ask them to leave national forests? You know, what kind of resource damage are they doing? We're asking all those kind of questions, and right now we don't have any good answers. But we were actually going to reach out to Lane County because they have a pretty solid homeless approach. But, you know, obviously, you know, Benton County and the other counties that we we engage with. We would love to have that conversation about potential services and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, we would be happy to engage on that topic and to know more about scope and scale of that challenge that you're seeing. And I know that anyone can camp on most BLM and Forest Service land for up to 14 days outside of designated camping areas. So I think that what we're seeing, not just here but nationally, is just more, I hate to say abuse because for some people it's just essential survival, but the system is becoming unbalanced. Yeah. So yes, we'd be happy to talk to you about it and about more coordinated approach.
Yeah, that would be great. And part of it is that we don't have as many people out on the landscape as we used to, and they're really, they're really adept at hiding. And so we probably have a lot more than we know about. So, yeah.
Yeah, with less harvest, there are fewer people on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's really all I had for, that's what I wanted to update you on. So.
Okay, thank you. We will turn to Scott, and, unless Nancy, you have questions for Michelle at this point. Okay.
Hear you.
I've only been doing this for a year and a quarter, and I still forget to mute all the time. Sorry. Paul anticipated, I think, your interest in the fire, and so while I didn't have that as my number one item to mention, I will bring that into the front. But basically within this is that we are, with fire season having started, we are coordinating with ODF on the fire season declarations. ODF remains our initial response, Forest Bureau agreements, and with the Western Oregon operating plan. As Michelle mentioned, we coordinate our firefighting responses with the EICC, with the Willamette and the Sayula National Forests. Then Paul made his final statement is we'd like to continue to strengthen our interagency, intergovernmental relationships in fire. And on a personal note, I can speak to the hiring process this year. Has the seasonal hiring team has definitely prioritized hiring our fire staff, because being able to hire my seasonal crew was really put on the lower priorities by comparison to hiring our fire staff. So it's identified as a priority, and they're making sure that we get our resources. So other than that, I can more or less say ditto to Michelle's comments and responses to the fire preparation we're working on.
Okay, and when it comes to the BLM resources here in Benton County, down south of Mary's Peak, in the Coast Range there, on the ONC lands, are you seeing a lot more recreational use and other encampments, homeless using the lands there as well?
There are areas that are known areas but it's whether it's exceeding anything that we've dealt with in the past. It's I think our LE law enforcement staff would say it's more, and there's people that tend to stay more. I think it's my seeing of it, but it's the same places. It seems like we have some spots primarily on the South Fork corridor that tend to be problematic, and then there's landing areas that people show up. But it's interesting. This has been going on for a long time. So, and our law enforcement staff gets out there. Relative to that, I also know that we're coordinating with Benton County Sheriff. Jeff Pratt is who we're working with to come in with Damian Hayes acting as our lead law enforcement officer from Northwest Oregon right now, and he's working with Jeff to make sure that we get patrols out there and have some presence on what's going, in the whole of our resource area. So.
And it's a large area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have more prepared comments for us as well?
Yeah, it's just as a kind of a general update on the things that were going on that we thought you'd be interested in knowing. Just north of LC, the community of LC, the BLM is operating the Beatty Ryder LSR thinning project. It's a 374-acre thinning activity. It had about 7.85 million board feet on it. Murphy Company had purchased it, and then we received approval to award it on March 4th, 2021. And since then, the purchaser has been out there doing road work. They've subcontracted with LC Quarries to do the road work. And then their goal is to get started on one of the ground-based units fairly soon. So there'll be some log trucks coming out of the Beatty Creek area fairly shortly, just so that it hits Highway 34 just west of LC, and then be headed various directions depending on where they want to get the lumber to. I also wanted to mention that we were in the planning and development of green timbers sale activities. Feet per miles was one of our LSR thinnings under the North 126 EA that we were working on. That was going to be timber sale LSR thinning in the Lobster Creek area. We also were actively working on a regen type project called the Loa Trout. That was just going to be a couple miles east of the community of LC. It was going to be a harvest land-based type timber sale planning area. We're going to have multiple sales kind of out of it, covering several years of volume. Both sales, as a result of the events occurring on the Cascade side, were pushed back. We still haven't actually officially put them back into our sale planning. And with that, then Paul also mentioned that we basically, since the events of September, have put our sale plans locally on hold. That which is not already sold or was in a position to be sold. And we've moved our staff and support over to the Cascade field office to help them move forward on the salvage. Essentially, we just redisplayed everything over to the other side of the Willamette Valley. So, and as we work through dealing with the magnitude and scale of what happened over there and start having the diminishing returns of timber value, we'll start adjusting our plans. But right now, that's what we're doing. If you have any questions on that, I'd love to share up. But that's basically where our timber plan is right now. So
I know that the log values and timber values were really high for a while, given all the construction demand and the homeowner projects and so on and so forth. But the prices are softening. Is that affecting some of the salvage operations, or are those decisions made independently of market?
Well, we will continue. I think the simplest way of putting this would be we will continue to try and offer available salvage until such a time as it no longer makes economic sense. And I don't know if I can give any more than that because I don't know all the variables that are going to go into deciding what that says. Obviously, if we get to a point of a no bid on salvage sales, that's where it needs to stop. And so I know all of the sale planners in our district and at the state level are thinking about that and how to best capitalize on the situation, if you will. I think that's a poor choice of word, but to manage it, mitigate it might be a better term. So.
And I know it's not been without controversy. So yeah. Okay.
So go ahead.
I don't have any other questions about harvest at the moment.
All right, cool. I also wanted to let you know that our LC Falls Rec site is open, and that's similar to Michelle. We are also paying attention to the Great America Outdoors Act, and we're also working on our proposal to do some activities in the rec site area. It's kind of preliminary, so I don't think I'm the right person to share much more than we're looking at it, and we'll probably be chatting with Benton County at more of the engineering level, public works level, insofar as the activities are going to be, we'll be talking about going on out there. So, and that question?
Oh, I was going to say that's excellent. I wanted to let you know that Rich Spofford from our roads division is here with us today. Given the fact that the notice about the Great American Outdoors Act funding is just coming out, and there's going to be a big public meeting online I can't remember when it is, next week. I wanted to make sure that Rich had, and Jesse Ott from our Natural Areas, Parks and Events staff had an opportunity to hear anything that you all had to say about the Great American Outdoors Act, and perhaps to jump in with questions if they have any. So you say you're just beginning the planning down there, and think about potential projects? Great.
For it, yes, that one is, I've seen something, but it's so early in the process. I would say it makes more sense to have conversations with the like Public Works and your rec planners people at this point, rather than so. I also wanted to say I have this is that with cooperations with the Council of Governments, Cascades West Council of Governments, and the Federal Highways, then BLM, and support from Benton County, we've completed the South Fork Comprehensive Plan, and I know that Public Works, Byerly is interested in developing a proposal for the Federal Lands Act, the flat process through the Federal Highways, and so we're starting that discussion on what are the next steps. Still preliminary. Just as an FYI, it's, due to the fires, a lot of our time is being put over into dealing with the issues over in the Cascades. So things are moving a little slower on that side because I'm basically the project lead for that. And so I'm not saying not now. It's going to be moving slower than I would originally have hoped. So.
I understand, and I did see Jesse pop on briefly, and maybe Jesse and Rich, you could both pop on and just show your faces, introduce yourself to Scott, since both of you are relatively new. I don't know whether you've all met.
Yes, hi Scott, Jesse with Benton County Natural Areas, Parks and Events, and I think I know what some of the projects you might be talking about, so we'll connect soon, I think, on some of the stuff out there in the LC area. So yeah, and I think we're also looking at the Great American Outdoors Act a lot, trying to see what we might be able to do there. So I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future.
Cool.
Hey Scott, this is Rich. I'm the road manager for the county. If there's any opportunity to work on South Fork Road, I know the residents out there would really appreciate maybe a partnership between us and you guys to improve that a bit.
Yep, it's been in planning and discussion ever since I first came on board, was first elected. So some of these things take a long time to ripen, and fires don't help. But yes, I'm looking forward to perhaps making sure we can get that project underway, and some Alcee Falls work and Mary's Peak work with the Great American Outdoors Act. It's all very exciting to see that investment, because these kinds of funds don't come up that often. When they do, we need to make the best of them. So thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Anything else, Scott?
Yep, I had one last set of things, just as kind of the cool things that we are doing. My aquatics team that was fitting in, Tony Spitzak, had been working on coordinating a project in the Bummer Creek area, basically just south of the community of Alcee, working with the Mid-Coast Watershed Council to do a small culvert replacement, head cut repair, and a wetland project. They'll be hopefully implemented this summer, could potentially be delayed into next year depending on the funding. It is partially RAC funded, so that was a pretty cool project. And then also, as we are continuing to move forward on our large tree, legacy tree enhancement work, and we'll be doing some trees. So if you have community that notices there's some trees going down way up over in the North Fork Access Road, basically in Township 13, Range 8, Section 11. We'll be dropping some smaller trees and creating some small gap openings to help grow some really cool wildlife trees. And then we have another potential out year project on Beatty Creek. We might be replacing a culvert, but we're managing that relative to the timber sale activities. But that's another project that our aquatic team is going to be working on. So that's the list I had.
Okay, that's great. Questions, Nancy?
No questions, just thank you for the information. I think out of all the topics that we look at as commissioners, the forestry stuff has been the biggest learning curve for me. Since besides one forestry class at OSU, I don't have much experience in it. So I'm picking it up as I go, and I really appreciate all the information that you share with us.
Thanks, Nancy. Jesse, do you have questions?
I've got a couple. I'll shoot emails offline, but otherwise, thank you so much, Michelle and Scott. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always good to go in front of the Benton County Commissioners.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I have to ask, channeling Annabelle Jaramillo, about the status of the Resource Advisory committees. We have not, I don't know what's going on there now. They were shut down basically under the last administration, and are they back?
Yes. But I'm not going to be the best one to answer that. I can reach out to Pat Johnson at our office in Northwest Oregon District office, and she's the lead for our RAC connections. I know the RAC is also meeting there, soon to have conversations about fee structures. So I know they are meeting. I know they met to disperse the Secure Rural Schools funding, and we are working on getting that money spread out through the assistance agreement system. So.
Well, good to know.
We actually got approved. The RAC got approved, our new members. However, it took like 2.5 years, and so we have to go ahead. We have to connect with those folks and ask them if they're still interested. And we're working on it, and it's great news. And we do have a couple years worth of Title II funds for Secure Rural Schools out there, ready to distribute. So we are working on figuring out the best way to do that. And I think what we're going to end up doing is bringing in the RAC folks together and talking with them about, Secure Rural Schools and how the RAC typically works and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of very new players. So. Lisa Romano, our public affairs officer, is the one that leads that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there's basically been a generational turnover in leaders and in RAC members. There were some very senior RAC members for a while, and so starting fresh. And we'd love to stay in the loop and know how things are going with both of the RACs.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have any further questions at this time. I thank you both for coming and for speaking to us today, addressing some of these issues that are top of mind, like the Great American Outdoors Act investments and strategies, and I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunity to talk about those as they evolve, given that you say that that actual spending is about 3 or 4 years out. Fire, I'm just going to keep knocking on whatever wood I have around me, and hope that we can get the message out to people to be really cautious this year. So, now on that note, I'm assuming that both agencies are doing a lot of public education work with respect to fire and caution.
Well, we're trying. I think that we typically rely on the larger public ads between the states and the federal agencies. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of very interested local publics that are interested in fire now, and so really the local the bottom line is yes, we're trying to do as much as we can. And we'll look, I think we will be much earlier into fire, restrictions than we have in the past. So,
yep,
that's my expectation. Yeah.
and of course, we do have another new resource in the region, and that's the OSU Fire Extension Program. And I'm assuming that you both are working with Extension as well to help with your messaging. I know that their fire safety lunch series has been extremely popular. So I think that last year's fires finally got people's attention. And there's a lot more preparation occurring out in our wildland urban interface communities, and hopefully in our more suburban communities as well.
Yeah.
Not only those folks living in the woods.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, there are no further items. Thank you. Appreciate it. And but you've actually gotten us way ahead of schedule, so figure out what we can do next.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, have a good day, and I'll let you get back to your other work. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to meet you, Nancy.
Bye, Scott. Bye, Michelle. Okay. Our next agenda item is to hear from Donna Holt from the Linvent Housing Authority, but I suspect that she is not yet on board because she wasn't expecting to be up early. So I am going to suggest that we take a break because we have multiple people on for item 4.4 after that, and I think it would be difficult to try to get everyone here early. So what do you say, Nancy?
That works for me.
Hi, Rachel.
Interject. I was just wondering where you guys have me on the agenda. I'm sorry, I got a little bit messed up on my schedule today.
Our public hearing is scheduled for noon.
It's scheduled for noon. Okay, sorry to have popped in then. I'll be here at noon.
It's just fine.
Thank you.
Okay, see you later. Okay, so sound good, Nancy? Take a break and be back just before 10:30 when our next agenda item is scheduled to start.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we now stand in recess until 10:30.
should just arrive.
Okay. She's not looking. I can't send her a message, right? Because that'll be shown. Let's see if I'll be on camera.
This is probably the slowest board meeting we've had in a long time.
Commissioner Oshra?
Looks like Donna might have gotten on.
Yes, she's on.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Welcome, Donna. Donna, oh, there you are. Welcome. Are you able to hear us? We can't hear you. We are getting a little bit of a little squeaking sound.
Yeah.
You're sounding a little bit like Mickey Mouse. I think perhaps if you were to log out and log back in again, we might be able to.
Is it any better?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
No Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse. Darn it.
Yeah, it was a kind of a funny one. Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And Donna, I don't know if you have a formal presentation or not, but why don't you introduce yourself more formally, and we will proceed.
Okay, I'll do that. My name is Donna Holt. I'm the Executive Director of Linvent Housing Authority. I've been with the Housing Authority over 27 years. Actually started in 1992 as an intern and 1994 as a full-time employee at like $4.75 an hour, I think, back then. Thought it was great. Still think it's great. And I wanted to start with the Linvent Housing Authority's history. First, the Housing Authority's jurisdiction is Linn County and Benton County, as it says. And we administer the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher. That's the way most people know us. We are also a affordable housing property developer and a property management. And we manage our own properties. So a little bit of history about the Housing Authority. In 1970, we'll go way back. I think I was even in grade school then. There were two housing authorities, Linn County and Benton County Housing Authority, separate, two different boards, but they shared a building and one employee. And they had 25 voucher, or actually they were just Section 8 units back then. And then in 1977, the two housing authorities formed together to form Linvent Housing Authority. So this year, 2020, we celebrated our 50th anniversary from 1970 to 2020. And in April 1978, the Housing Authority was when they were connected, the two counties were connected to form one housing authority. In 1981,
had decided we needed some housing quality standards, and started doing inspections on those Section 8 units. They increased to 100 units at the time, from 25 to 100. And those were divided by Linn County and Benton County back then. HUD said Linn County had 65, Benton County had 35. I have no idea why it was divided like that. In 1986, the Housing Authority reached 1,000 Section 8 units. And the eligibility for a 4-person family for the voucher program, or for that Section 8 program, in Benton County was over $14,000 a year for a family of 4. Linn County was just under $13,000 for a family of 4. Right now, in Benton County, it's well over $42,000, and Linn County, it's closer to $34,000 per year for families. So just some perspective there. And during the 80s, the vacancy rates were really high, and rents were stagnant in spite of rising costs. Property values were decreased, and new construction was basically non-existent. I found that really interesting compared to today. So, like I said, we just celebrated our 50th year anniversary. We have over 2,500 families on our Section 8 voucher program. That's paying rents directly to Linn County and Benton County property owners for renters that are part of the voucher program. In that time, in the 80s and 90s, I believe it was the 90s, the voucher program became the program of the Housing Authority. So all of Section 8 was then called the voucher program. And so now we just call it the voucher program. A lot of different things changed during that time, but it is today the Housing Authority, with HUD's contract, supplements a family's rent directly to a landlord, and the family pays the difference. So a landlord receives 2 payments. That's how the voucher program works. To this date, we pay nearly $15 million a year in Linn County and Benton County. And just by default, the majority of those funds go into Linn County because of affordability issues and availability issues. Many families, we find, do not lease up in Benton County. And we have also special vouchers. We have applied for non-elderly disabled vouchers and been successful in that, over 150 of those. We have veteran vouchers targeted just for VASH, or veterans, in Linn and Benton County. We work directly with the VA in Portland. And we also have foster youth to independence vouchers that we work with DHS on, leasing up individuals who have been in a foster program up to age 26. And the voucher payment standard is a difficult concept to explain, but it's the maximum amount a housing authority will pay for a unit that family rents. In Linn County, it's $1,133 for a 2-bedroom, whether it's a house or apartment. And in Benton County, it's $1,217. So you can see the difference in the dollars. So in dealing with 2 separate counties, it is challenging by far, especially these 2 counties. But we have found historically that it's been most challenging for utilization of the voucher program in Benton County. High cost of living at times is the highest in the state in Benton County. Linn County tends to be the default county for most of our programs because of that. And I believe it was the 80s that HUD stopped dividing the voucher allocation to Linn and Benton County, and it's just by natural process and default that happens. I mentioned that we are property developers and property management. We have nearly 300 affordable housing units in Linn County and Benton County, the majority in Linn County, again, for similar reasons. And of those, we have 3 that are large multifamily developments. Those are targeted for seniors 55 and older. You may be familiar with those in Linn County. Clayton Meadows is on Queen Avenue in Albany. Riverview Place is downtown Albany on 3rd and Calapooia. And if you have been downtown, you probably noticed a lot of construction on that building right now. That building was built in 2009 and had some faulty construction on the exterior, and we won a lawsuit last year, and we are now in the process of re-siding that, doing repairs, and repainting it in the process. Kind of giving it a facelift at the same time. Gardenview Apartments is in Lebanon, and that's on South Main, back behind the Walmart area. Gardenview is our newest development. All of these were developed with tax credit dollars through the IRS program and with some layering of other funds. I believe Riverview Place even used some City of Albany CDBG money back then. Gardenview Apartments is also 55 and older, and it's a new direction the Housing Authority is going in development. We have a supportive services agreement with Samaritan Health Services, and we have an exam room in the building, so seniors can have preventative care. It's really a win-win situation for the residents, for the Housing Authority, for the funds and the investors, and very much so for Samaritan Health Services. It prevents seniors from overusing emergency facilities and keeps them healthy and active and in the same environment, and the ability to live independently without being put in a care facility. I mean, that's the goal we're going in actually with all of our properties as we move toward the future. We have many MOUs with services. In Benton County, we built Camas Commons. Some of you may be familiar with that in Corvallis. At the time, it was Willamette Neighborhood Housing. We went to them and announced if they were interested and partnered on Camas Commons. It's a very successful project and one that we'd love to duplicate. It's Dev Northwest now. We still have that partnership with them, and it remains a very successful property in our portfolio. Many families live there. It's a mixed population of seniors and families and persons with disabilities. And it's, again, all of these properties are managed by the Housing Authority Property Management. We do that because we're control freaks. We actually like to have that control of those properties. We've tried to farm it out without success. Actually, a little bit of fear to do that now. We are able to maintain the quality housing itself, and we are able to apply rental criteria that's a bit more flexible than your average landlord for this population we serve, and that's really necessary, and we will continue to do that. We have various other properties in rural and urban Linn County. We have agreements with Linn County Mental Health on properties here in Albany, and we have properties in Brownsville, Scioto, and various places throughout Linn County. So we really do hit the outlying area. Partnerships are wonderful. Like I mentioned, Dev Northwest has been in Willamette Neighborhood. PASS has been a great partnership. We also partner with Community Services Consortium, and we are doing that right now. A few weeks ago, some current events, the Housing Authority was awarded 178 emergency housing vouchers. And those emergency housing vouchers are a very new thing to the HUD world and to every housing authority. We've had a few weeks to scramble and study those, figure out how to administer those. To gather our partners, right now we're working directly with Community Services Consortium and CARPA on those vouchers. Those vouchers serve homeless, nearly homeless, and victims of domestic violence, and they're effective July 1st, and as you can imagine, we are scrambling to get it going. So we've been working nonstop on that. CSC and CARPA have been just a blessing for us to work with on this project. We're excited about it. It's a lot of money in this community, and it's a lot of services that are and housing that's well needed. We all realize the limitations on the availability of housing. That will be a challenge. Working with landlords is a priority. As a housing authority, we keep that priority. That is a partner, a necessary partner for all of these programs I talked about. We keep in mind that landlords are the third party to the triangle relationship, a housing authority, a tenant, and a landlord. All of that is necessary to keep the voucher program and the various Section 8 HUD programs going. It's really going to be necessary with this emergency housing voucher program that we're administering. So we also became involved last year in the landlord compensation fund through the state of Oregon. So we administer the funds for that. We found it's been underutilized for various reasons. I think some of the implementation of it has changed at the state level in the last week. So we should see a little more utilization of that program, I hope. And with CSD's help with the tenant emergency rental assistance, I think that these team of agencies in this county, Benton County and Linn County, have really done a good job in keeping people from becoming homeless unnecessarily and keeping people safe during COVID. It's just heartwarming, and it's really been bonding for all of us to work together on these programs. So that's where the housing authority is at this point. We continue to search for land for development. We do keep funds in an account so that we can grab some land or land bank quickly so that we can get a development going, a lot like we did in Lebanon with Gardenview. And that allows us to keep increasing that affordable housing in our area. And we've also worked with Albany Partnership and so many other agencies. I could have a long list here. We all work really well together. Thank you. Any questions on any of that?
Nancy?
Sure, thank you, Donna. I have a couple questions. When it comes to the vouchers, I always hear anecdotally that there is a huge, crazy wait list. Do you know about how long that wait list is right now?
Getting close to 4,000 families. And that's Linn and Benton County. The majority of them are in Linn County. Yes, it climbs every day. You know, a lot of times families come on the program, families meaning those who are able to become self-sufficient at some point by whatever means, and they exit off the program after so many years voluntarily or involuntarily if there's a compliance issue. During COVID, we really backed off of our compliance a little. Not enough to cause problems, but recognizing that there was a health issue in our community, our state, our world. And we try to keep people housed in order to keep that health issue stabilized. And so the waiting list built up more. We weren't able to transition people off the program and bring more on in its place. So the waiting list grew. We're working rapidly to clear up that waiting list to get more folks on the program, though we are staying at 99 or 100% utilized in our vouchers. So in spite of the challenges with the rental markets and the availability of affordable housing, we are getting people out there and into units. It is, I'm not going to say it's easy, and it's a lot of spinning our wheels, but people are using their vouchers in the area.
Wow, that just blows my mind, a 4,000 family long waiting list. That definitely highlights the need that we have in this area. And then another question, when it comes to using the vouchers, the way I understand it is it's up to the individual landlord if they want to accept the vouchers. Is that correct?
Only to a limit. So the state of Oregon, several years ago, 2017, I believe, passed a source of income control. So Section 8 vouchers is considered a source of income. So it's discrimination prevention. So if a landlord is vetting tenants for a vacant unit, they cannot deny one of those tenants merely because they have a Section 8 voucher. That's a protected class. The source of income becomes a protected class, like any other protected class. They can, however, vet them for within the compliance of the landlord-tenant laws for criminal history, credit history. There are some stipulations in that prevent them from being denied for income because of the voucher program. So if they have a voucher, there are some supportive laws in place within the state of Oregon. Hopefully that becomes a national thing that prevents landlords from judging families because of their voucher or source of income. So that is true, but it has a twist to it.
Sure. No, I thought I'd heard something like that happen a couple years ago.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you.
It's been huge. I think one thing to make clear is many landlords think that they have to always take someone with a voucher if they come knocking at their door. They do not if they don't meet their other legal rental criteria. That they should vet them the way they would any other family that comes to them to rent.
Thank you for that, Donna. I know that one of the other discussion points that we've had regularly in the HOPE Advisory Board is about place-based vouchers. And basically, the whole program was place-based until the Housing Choice Act came in. And so now having some of the vouchers stay with the residents rather than follow a tenant is not the norm. Can you tell us what makes that more difficult and why we don't do more of that? Because it is a funding mechanism that really helps the developers when they are going for funding.
Yes, and it's a variety of complicated factors, and every one of them are reasonable and dependent on the economy and the time and place. Like I had mentioned in the history, that years ago it was just called Section 8 units, that we had 25 of them, 100 of them, and they grew over the years. And then they turned into a certificate, Section 8 certificate, and families rented very similar to the vouchers. They went out and found a landlord to rent from. What you may be thinking of is in those years, those early years, a program came out called public housing. And public housing was not the Section 8 program. It was a HUD program very similar, but it was what you refer to as place-based, which is unit-based is what HUD called it. And those are type 2. Linn County and Benton County didn't do much of that. Many of the housing authorities that ended up implementing unit-based vouchers or assistance were big cities. Well, even the city of Salem received some and still remains. Portland, and you've heard of people talk about the Bronx and the projects of New York. Those were public housing. Those are going out the window. There's not enough stabilized flow of income from HUD to keep those buildings in good shape, so many of them have become dilapidated and torn down, sold. Even housing authorities had to file bankruptcy on many of those and foreclosures on projects. So not at the fault of the administrating agency, but that the funds were stopped at some point. So housing authorities are told you may project-base your vouchers in your community. So all of our vouchers are open to any landlord that qualifies. We've had a few landlords on our bad list, but most every landlord that qualifies, a family can rent from them, and we will send rent payments to them. We report all that stuff to the IRS. But the reasons that, well, let me go back. The way that you project-base a voucher at housing authority is first you put it in your administrative plan, which I did that about 5.5 years ago. Up to that point, this housing authority and their board, the Linvent Housing Authority board and the directors at that time, had not wanted to pursue that route, and for various reasons that I do understand. The first reason, and the most important one that has the most impact, is that the vouchers are already 100% utilized. And the thing to understand is that these vouchers, when you say project-based vouchers, come from that same pot of vouchers. So if 2,500 families are already using those vouchers, we can't take those away and put them on a building, project-based stuff. So that's one of the challenges. And the other was the economy, the way the rental market was. And here's a big one, the administrative burdens. For whatever reason, and we can ask this of any government program, but especially HUD, it is so complicated to run these HUD programs, and I don't think that comes as a surprise to you. I know it doesn't to me. But it's even more complicated and burdensome to run the project-based program. And I don't know why, and we've petitioned to get things changed and waived and altered so that we can do this. But I 100% agree with you, Dan, that it does increase or motivate affordable housing development. And that's exactly why I put it in our administrative plan. Because once we have some flexibility, can figure out the capacity within my agency to administer those, and once we can figure out how to maybe streamline a few things and petition HUD to get some waivers on some of the processes, then I really want to use that as a tool for development in Linvent County. And the thing to keep in mind is that anyone and everyone can apply for those project-based vouchers. So a housing authority puts out an RFP for that. And then the proposals come in from for-profit landlords, a nonprofit, other agencies, the housing authority, the authority themselves, and it becomes a competitive process. So if I put 50 vouchers out there and said, hey, we have 50 vouchers, I have to spell out what they're for. They're for seniors. Our housing needs says that we need to get senior housing, or it's for families, or it's for folks coming out of incarceration, or so then we look for applicants with that housing type development in mind, and that's where it becomes a competitive process. We did take 9 vouchers, and this was a test run, and applied them to the Gardenview building in Lebanon, and we're now in the process of kind of weeding out all those challenging things, trying to get waivers from HUD and figuring out the capacity for administering those project-based vouchers. And it's going okay so far. We've run into some complications, but we're confident. Well, we have to work them out. We're tied to them now. We also project-based, and this was a new thing. Not many have done this. We project-based our VASH vouchers, 3 of them. So we said, hey, let's create units that are there for the veterans. And the VA liked the idea, but at that time, Roseburg was our VA contact, and I fought them to allow us to get even 3. I wanted 12 or 15, and they said, maybe 1 or 2, and then I got up to 3. So since then, I've done a lot of convincing HUD that we can't work with Roseburg VA, and they transferred us up to Portland. Portland would do it in a minute. So as we want to and need to and have the ability to, we will do that with those VASH vouchers, because all the veterans don't have to do so much searching. They can rent from a housing authority or an agency or someone who has the flexibility in their rental criteria to help that veteran stay housed, because there are challenges, PTSD, some other things. So that's some of our project-based. Hopefully that answered your question. I know it's kind of a long-winded question, but I hope I came back to, or long-winded answer. I came back to the reason we haven't done that yet, and that we actually have sampled it, and that it is in our policies, and we're able to do that now in the future. And we look forward to doing that when the time comes.
Thank you. It's one of those questions that always comes up. I understand it a little bit better each time. I'm really glad to hear that you are going to HUD for administrative waivers. And as I've said before, if you ever need help with any kind of reminders to our congressional delegation to assist us, please let us know. We are here and ready to assist in whatever way we can. And as you know, we are really eager to get more low-income housing and permanent supportive housing of all types, for veterans, for seniors, for families into Benton County, because it doesn't do our families any good to have to commute all the way across the valley just in order to use a voucher over in Lebanon or in Brownsville. It's not very good for family stability in many cases. They lose their networks of support. So we are really wanting to increase that capacity here in Benton County. So I know that administrative support is one of the barriers for you, for Linvent Housing Authority. You all work really, really hard, but it's like hamsters on the hamster wheel, keeping those vouchers in utilization. And it's hard to really look up and look long term. So part of what I was wondering was whether it might be feasible, useful for us to consider using some of our American Rescue Plan dollars to help somehow give the Housing Authority a boost for a couple of years to be able to take advantage of this burst of money and do a little bit of longer term strategizing and get ahead of the curve so that we actually can increase housing capacity while we have the funds available to do such things. So let's talk about that more.
Okay. Well, then, first of all, thank you. You have constantly reassured us and offered support from Benton County, and both Benton County and Linn County commissioners and city jurisdictions, Albany and Corvallis, have been very supportive of our agency and other agencies. But one thing we're doing right now is we are applying along with CSC for a grant to fund a case manager position, mainly because we just received 178 vouchers for emergency housing vouchers. So there's a little bit of panic and excitement all built together, sort of like a marriage, right? Excitement and panic. So we have that going on with our vouchers coming in, but we would welcome some funds. It's a lot of training for a staff person to get the hang of these regulations and implementation. HUD continues to underfund us in our administrative area. That's just a broken record for us. We get used to it, and we just make it, stretch it out and make it work. This year we received around 80%. There have been years when we received 69% of our administrative funds and had to lay people off and still make the program work. I think through that many government agencies have learned a lesson through COVID. It was a terrible thing for, this country to go through, any country. But through COVID, they realized, hey, we have people living on the streets and we need to get them off the streets, but we also need to keep people from being on the streets. And who are those agencies or entities or nonprofits that are doing the job already? And why are we underfunding them? Why don't we fund them better? So we hear the talk in the DC area from our DC connection that, light bulbs are going off finally. They should have went off 30 years ago. Better late than never. And if it takes a pandemic, I guess that's one of the only good things we get out of a pandemic is awareness. So, Dan, how about if you would be willing to send me that information in an email, and I have my meeting with our staff that does staffing, and we're bringing on some staffing here pretty soon. Maybe we could use that to incorporate and see where we can go within this next year with it.
And I should let you know that with respect to our American Rescue Plan Act dollars, we have not made any funding decisions yet. And in fact, we are working on a process to do so, and we will involve some community input into that process as we establish our priorities and spending plans. And some of it will be spent on county priorities, kind of internal, but then this is a part of the external piece, and housing and homelessness are clearly one of the major priorities and one of the major areas that is allowable for expenditure within the ARPA. So yes, let's stay in touch. Mary Otley, our Chief Financial Officer, is on the call. However, she is, I hate to say it, retiring and won't be with us full-time anymore after July 1st. But we definitely are working on this and want to make sure that we support you and housing development for low-income housing here in Benton County.
I appreciate that. I do want to add that looking at our year coming up, or a couple of years coming up, the board has determined that it is our goal to get land in Benton County, preferably Corvallis and or Philomath, so that we can get a larger development built there, a lot like Camas Commons or even Gardenview. Camas Commons is such a great neighborhood kind of development that we'd love to do that there. So we're in search of property in Benton County and partnerships always and that's our focus right now. And it has to be, because when we look at that balance of funds, over $15 million just in the voucher program in Lynn and Benton County, but the majority of that defaulting into Lynn County. We need to do something else to fight that trend in Benton County. So part of that, what we can do is development, and that's aside from the voucher program. Get that development over there, and maybe even project-based, some vouchers if we get, if utilization loosens up a little. We're at 100% right now. So definitely a focus. So another note out to Benton County is, as you are in the community, if you know of any real estate opportunities that you could send our way, we are actively searching. Thank you.
That's great to know. And as you are probably aware, our next panel we were ahead of schedule, and now we're falling behind again, is a discussion on vision and role in expanding permanent supportive housing in Benton County. And Emily Riemann is here from Dev Northwest, Darren Murphy from Commonwealth. I'm expecting to see someone here from Corvallis Housing First, but I don't see anyone yet. This flows naturally into that conversation, and I hope you'll stick around. What we asked each of these folks to do is to give us a brief presentation about their organization, mission, vision, and how they see themselves fitting into the proposals that we've made through the Hope Advisory Board has made, and that we have accepted to develop more permanent supportive housing units in the area. So yes, it all fits together.
Yes. I'll try to hang around for a bit. That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Donna. Okay. Welcome to our panelists. And so Emily, Darren, please join us.
Sure. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Darren. Hello, Emily.
Hi there.
I'm sorry that Commissioner Malone couldn't be here. I really was hoping to have this series of panels on housing and homelessness issues and with our providers in the area, so that all of the commissioners would have a sense for who the players are, be able to put faces with names and get a sense for role you play in the community. So with that, why don't you each introduce yourselves?
Sure. Go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Darren. I'm Emily Ryman. I'm the CEO of Dev Northwest. And for anybody who's not used to that name yet, Dev Northwest is a rebrand after Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services merged with another nonprofit. And so we are who used to be Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services, but now known as Dev Northwest. And thanks for asking me to be here today. I'm happy to join you.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Hi, I'm Darren Murphy with Commonwealth Development. We are a national affordable housing development firm, and I'm based up in Portland. Thanks for having us today.
Thank you. And which of you would like to begin in terms of describing to us your organization, and do you have any presentation materials, or will you just be speaking?
Darren, you want to rock, paper, scissors for it, or shall I launch in?
Go ahead, Emily, please.
All right. And I don't have materials to share. I was planning on just giving a quick overview, and then I'm happy to answer questions, hoping that it might lead to a little bit of discussion, because I'm very curious to hear what Darren has to say and other thoughts as well. So very quick overview, Dev Northwest is a nonprofit community development corporation. We serve a 6-county area. Our joint headquarters based on the merger are in Corvallis and in Springfield. So we're mostly in the kind of lower Willamette Valley area and over to the coast. We own about 400 units, a little over 400 units of affordable housing, mostly in the Linvent region. And our overall mission is to develop vibrant communities by helping individuals, families, small businesses, and neighborhoods build financial stability and financial opportunity. So obviously affordable housing is a key piece of that. We continue to be an affordable housing developer, so we're adding to that 400 units. Historically, and probably going forward, we are primarily a tax credit developer or a developer of kind of traditional affordable housing models. That means that we're using federal and state resources. Because of the tax credit program, there's sort of a sweet spot of a size of housing project, and those housing projects tend to be sort of in the 25 to 30 range on the small end and the like 50 to 60 kind of size on the large end. And that has to do with how those funds are allocated, particularly to the Corvallis and Benton County region. I'm happy to go into more detail about that. But the bigger projects that you see up in the Portland metro area just aren't possible with the 9% tax credits. With the kind of 4% tax credit and LIFT program, you can get a little bit bigger, but there are just some constraints from those funding sources on what type of project and the size of project that are viable. And so we're sort of looking for that sweet spot project. Generally speaking, it also means that the residents of our housing are below 60% area median income for Benton County. So just to give you a rough sense, for a single person household, the 2021 numbers just came out. And so for a one-person household, that would be an annual income of $35,700. For a family of 4, that would be $51,000 a year. So it's under those income thresholds that we're looking to serve in our housing. In addition to housing development, affordable housing development, we also do financial well-being and asset building services. And so that is everything from very basic financial literacy. How do you try to get through the month with the money that you have and stretch the money that you have, all the way up through how do you begin saving for college? How do you save for a first home? How do you start a small business? Things like that that can help a family move ahead financially over time. And then we also do a lot of work in community engagement and neighborhood building. So this is sometimes organizing community events, organizing resident and neighbor groups. Sometimes it's supporting small businesses to relocate into a neighborhood that is redeveloping. So a number of different services that we can use to try to help a neighborhood be a thriving, vibrant, economically advancing place. So that's Dev Northwest as a whole. And again, happy to answer questions on any of that. In terms of where we sit in the permanent supportive housing space, this is actually a question that we're grappling with as an agency right now. And I don't think we have the final answer, but I'm thrilled to be at the table and be part of the conversation because more than anything, we want to be a good partner in that. And we recognize that we are one of many players that need to be involved in permanent supportive housing. So currently, we do have some permanent supportive housing units. They are primarily scattered in larger developments that we own. So for example, we might have a 40-unit development that has 4 or 6 units set aside for permanent supportive housing. Most of those units are managed in partnership with referral partners. So we may get referrals from partner service agencies around Corvallis or Benton County that we prioritize when we're looking to fill those particular units. And then we work with those referral partners to provide ongoing services to the residents who are living in those units. So we don't have larger PSH sites, but we do have those kind of scattered units within our larger developments. In future, we can pretty easily see that role continuing at a minimum as we build more sites, continuing to work in a few PSH units to those larger projects. I think that's a pretty easy role for us to play. I think Dev Northwest also has something to offer to a collaboration around development and being a development partner. So we have right now a 3-person real estate development team that is also planning to grow. So we're adding, in the short term, we're adding some intern positions, or we're calling them apprentice positions, to that department, and maybe looking to hire another developer as well. And that team has experience with the due diligence involved in scouting locations, choosing locations, doing the financial modeling around different types of housing that could go on a site, different types of funding streams that are available, and we also have a lot of experience with those more complicated state funding applications and tax credit funding applications. So I think we're happy to offer and lend our development expertise, whether it's a project that we plan to own long term or whether it's a project that somebody else in the community plans to own long term, but they need a little bit of help on the front end with that development expertise. So I think that's, again, a pretty clear role for us to play and where we have a lot of expertise to offer. Similarly, I think we have a lot of expertise to offer in the ongoing property management and asset management part of a collaboration. So we generally work with a third-party property manager, but even when you have a third party, there's still some oversight needed to help that management company be successful and integrate them with the owner of the housing. And then in terms of asset management, just taking care of a building long-term and tracking the needs over time for repair and maintenance and capital upgrades that need to happen. Generally speaking, especially if you have a project that is entirely permanent supportive housing, the wear and tear on that building is going to be a little bit higher. And so planning for that financially and then managing those maintenance needs and upgrade needs over time is another place where we have a lot of experience and skill that we want to offer on behalf of a permanent supportive housing collaboration. I think in general where we're struggling a little bit more to define our role, figure out our role, is when it comes to services for sure. We have not historically had the staffing or the capacity or the expertise to provide high-level services to the most vulnerable populations. So we have some resident services staff and we have some community health worker staff who can provide some solid services. But we don't have licensed clinical social workers, we don't have drug and alcohol counselors, we just don't have the level of support on staff that a lot of residents of permanent supportive housing need to be successful. And so that has been, that's been a capacity challenge for us, even with the limited permanent supportive housing units that we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I cover some of the kind of landscape challenges. So we definitely, I think, would defer to others in the service realm who are probably better positioned than we are to play that role in a collaboration, but certainly open to what that partnership looks like and where we can be of help or assistance. And then the final piece is that we would be looking to others primarily to bring rent assistance to a collaboration too. It's great that the Housing Authority is here, and then there are also some state-level rent assistance pots of money that are freeing up for permanent supportive housing projects that we might be able to get and bring to the community. But Dev Northwest does not currently control any kind of ongoing rent assistance funding, and that's obviously a key component to a permanent supportive housing project. So that's where I think those are some of the most natural avenues for us to play a role in that permanent supportive housing future. But I think we very much see that as a collaboration where Dev Northwest can play some parts, but would definitely be looking to others to play additional key roles where we have less capacity and less experience. Yeah, I think that's kind of the summary of where we sit in that PSH space. And then just to contribute a little bit to the overall conversation and thinking moving forward, I wanted to touch on a few things that are top of mind for us in terms of where we see the current landscape and particularly some of the challenges and opportunities in that landscape for housing development in general and permanent supportive housing in particular. So on the development side, just getting units built, the good news and the opportunity is that there is a lot of increasing funding in Oregon, and this has been a trend even predating ARPA. So there is a strong statewide coalition of people interested in affordable housing led by the Oregon Housing Alliance that have spent the greater part of the last 10 years advocating at a state level to create new funding streams for housing development. And that has been quite successful over the years. Each legislative session, we get another victory or two. And so there are definitely increasing resources. And then with the ARPA money coming in at the state level and then at individual community levels, there's going to be another big kind of temporary influx here as well I think like Benton County, many of those jurisdictions, including the state, are still trying to figure out exactly how and where to deploy those funds. And so we don't know much for sure yet, but what we're hearing from the state level is that there's a lot of will to dedicate a lot of those funds to housing development and affordable housing development. So hopefully that comes to fruition. The slight downside of that, and I'm not going to overplay the downside because really more money for housing all across Oregon is a big win. But one of the realities of that is that it is also increasing competition to get those funds to the local level. So if we look at statewide funds that are available, we're competing. As local developers, we're competing for those dollars against a lot of other communities in the state who want them equally fiercely and who need them equally fiercely. So there are more developers coming to Oregon to play. There are developers that are trying to ramp up and have more capacity and be able to do bigger projects like Dev Northwest is. But that means that even though there are more resources available, many of the funding rounds remain very highly competitive. And so we're still seeing, for each project that there is funding available for, there may be 6 projects that are going into the application cycle. And so what that means is that a project has to be super competitive. We have to be looking for land and designing projects in a way that maximize the points they can score when we're going into those funding rounds. Part of the point is local leverage. So it means that local investment into these projects is really important. Has been for a while, but is staying important and probably getting increasingly important. So that we're competing against other jurisdictions that are making those local investments too. So something to think about as we go forward with planning. The other biggest reality in our world right now is that labor and materials are just insane. So anybody who is trying to build anything right now, I'm sure will relate to this. But, sheets of plywood, I think, have gone up like 400%, 500% in the last year. It's just really, I've never seen the like of it as long as I've been in this business. Labor is also getting more expensive and in shorter supply, and so it's taking longer to get contractors, to get subs, to get projects moving forward, and the cost of labor is going up as well. So, we are certainly experiencing this, and what I'm hearing from our peers across the state is that we submit a funding application for a project that pencils in that moment, and 9 or 10 or 11 months later, when we should be getting to the close of that financing, we're looking at $2 million budget gaps just because of the rising cost of materials in that time. Now, in the last week or two, we've seen just a little bit of softening there and prices coming down a little bit, and so we're hopeful that maybe that trend continues, but I think it's too early to know for sure, and it's certainly too early to know how far down it might come and where it comes to rest again. So certainly as we're planning development in Corvallis, in the Linvent region, we need to be thinking about how to help overcome that reality right now and build projects with some flexibility, have some funding with some flexibility to meet those budget gaps. So those are kind of the development realities right now, just in terms of stick-built construction. On the services side, I mentioned earlier that at Dev Northwest, even with the few permanent supportive units that we have, we struggle to provide adequate services to those families. And I just want to say a little bit more about that because I think it's also important as we move forward with community level planning. So, we have resident services staff and community health worker staff that can help residents connect to services. During the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of food drops and wellness checks, especially for our residents that are more isolated during the pandemic. And we can help them connect to medical sources, resources. We can help them connect to community events and other resources that are going on. But as I mentioned, our staff are not licensed clinical social workers. We don't have that level of support to offer. So just a couple of examples from real experiences that we have had with tenants lately. We had a tenant in one of our buildings who was struggling with untreated schizophrenia and was off medication and had fallen away from a lot of their support systems and was causing daily and, I think more importantly, middle of the night disruptions nightly to all of the other residents in that building. It was causing other residents to be fearful of living there. It was disrupting sleep, and it was disrupting life for a lot of residents in the building. And that's a really tough situation to handle as the landlord, as resident services providers, because we have an obligation to also, maintain safety for the rest of the tenants at that property. And so trying to get the right services for that tenant, we really ran into a lot of dead ends. The community just didn't have the level of housing that person needed, or the level of wraparound 24-hour care and assistance and support that person needed to be successful in housing. As another example, at a different property, we recently had somebody whose drug use was making them very volatile, including using racial slurs and threats against BIPOC neighbors at the same property. And so that, again, was a very difficult situation to manage in terms of ensuring the safety and mental health of the other residents around that tenant as well. And again, reaching out for community supports, trying to refer that person to the drug and alcohol and mental health counseling that they needed. Ran into a lot of dead ends, ran into a lot of, it's 8 months wait to get into a program. And so that leaves us in a very difficult place, again, as both a landlord, property manager, and a service provider, trying to balance the needs of that person who is very vulnerable and very high needs, and also the neighbors around that person. And so, to be perfectly honest, that's a lot of our hesitation to dive more deeply into permanent supportive housing, and to be building more PSH units until we know that there are those corresponding services in place with some reliable and stable funding for them. Because if we're building housing that is dedicated to this population for the next 30 or 40 years, it's really hard to do that without knowing that the services are going to be there at the level they need to be for those same years. So I would really encourage us and encourage a part of this conversation to be thinking about the level of services and also the typology of housing that those most vulnerable members of our community need, and then kind of work backwards from there in terms of what we need to put in place to make sure that they're supported successfully in housing in the coming years.
Thank you, Emily.
So my opening thoughts. Yeah, happy to answer questions or provide more detail about any of it.
A lot of food for thought, and one of the HOPE Advisory Board recommendations is definitely to address the need for that casework and the clinical social work or mental health providers to address that need. And I'm hoping with the state's 1115 waiver for people with substance use disorders, we will have a funding mechanism that helps provide that stability and continuity over time. And it's just horrible when everywhere you turn, you hit a dead end in terms of trying to get someone help. And we hear it again and again. It's not a system anyone would have designed if they could do it intentionally. So let's move on to Darren, and then we can have a bit of a discussion. We have, in terms of our allocated time, up until 11:45. We can take a little bit longer than that. We can take up to about 11:50. So I want to switch over and then provide Nancy an opportunity for questions and have some discussion.
Sure. Well, thank you. And I think I'll keep my remarks brief. Emily did a really good job of covering kind of all we do as an industry and kind of some of the tools we use and some of the challenges we face. So I won't rehash a lot of that. Maybe just a few more minutes on kind of our company and what we do. Again, I work for Commonwealth Development. I'm based up in Portland. We do a lot of the same stuff that Dev Northwest does, except we're a national developer, whereas Dev Northwest is more of a community-based developer. So we don't have the luxury of working in the same community over and over. We tend to do a project in one community, then move to the next community. So we're probably not as engaged locally as folks like Emily and Dev Northwest. As a company, we've done about 3,000 units of affordable housing. We tend to work a lot in rural areas, areas where there's a need but a lack of capacity. So we just finished a project at the coast, and we're working on a new one down in Jackson County to help with some of the recovery and rebuilding efforts from the fires last year. And I think the reason I was invited today is we are also working on a new project in Corvallis. This is a 4% tax credit and lift project that we got funded last year, and we're hoping to break ground here yet this summer. So again, to Emily's point, we use a lot of the same tools. We're primarily using the tax credit program and some of the state funding programs. We haven't historically done a lot of permanent supportive housing, but like Dev Northwest, there are projects where we may have 3 or 4 units or 5 or 6 units, but the focus for us is mostly family housing, with often a handful of permanent supportive housing units that are fully supported by local service agencies. And in the region here, Community Services Consortium is our primary kind of referral partner and ongoing support partner for those units that we have developed. Excuse me, I'm battling some allergies too, so I apologize in advance. And I think one of the strengths that we bring to the table, and again, Emily touched upon this, that my vision of permanent supportive housing is it takes a lot of different partners to get a project like this done. When you look at a place like Portland, there are some big providers and big service organizations that work with that population, that also have the real estate development skills, that also have the financial backing to be able to do a project like that. Places like Corvallis, my vision would be assembling a team of partners and leveraging the strengths of each of those partners to get it done. We're really good at the real estate part of it, the nuts and bolts of developing, getting the funding from the state. But when it comes to the community-based approach, it is groups like Dev Northwest and Corvallis Housing First that are really on the ground operating the units and providing the services and ongoing support. So again, we're happy to be a resource as far as the real estate side goes, but I think operating a project like this is certainly not in our wheelhouse, and we wouldn't ever claim it to be. I think it's just not one of our strengths. But again, I think having the right partnerships and having the right people, we're willing to take a little bit more risk on the front end, on the real estate side, but need to know that there is an operator that can handle the project for the long term. And as Emily mentioned, also asset management, ongoing support. So there's a lot that goes into it. And again, Emily covered a lot of what I was going to say, but one of the challenges too is obtaining the resources from the state. There are a lot of new resources out there, but as she mentioned, there's an increasing incentive for projects that come in the door to have local support and ask for as little or as few dollars from the state as possible to make it work. And the only way you can do that is by local contributions from the city or counties. So, one of the suggestions I would have is to look hard at the resources that are available and try to commit those to projects like this. I joined at the tail end of the discussion of the project-based rental assistance, which is a big tool that a lot of folks around the state are using, that allows to potentially leverage a little bit more debt and ask for fewer resources from the state. There are things like property tax exemption and other soft sources that a lot of communities have found ways to bring to the table. And again, that just helps make the projects in Corvallis, Benton County, a lot more competitive when you're competing with projects in Eugene or Portland or the metro area. So I guess, a suggestion would be to look at all the tools that are available and know that all of those tools would have to go into a project like this. I just don't know that it would be competitive without all those tools to make it happen at the state level too. And then the only other suggestion I would have, or one of the challenges too, is the availability of land. It's very challenging out there to find adequate land. And when you're looking at a project like this, it's even more difficult because of potential opposition from the community. So I know there's a lot of community at the leadership level in Benton County and in Corvallis, but when it comes down to trying to cite a project, a permanent supportive housing project, it's inevitable that there will be some opposition. So finding that needle in the haystack, the development site that can accommodate the kind of housing you want to build, but is supportive of the community around it, is a challenge right now. The project we're developing in Corvallis is kind of on the outskirts. It borders county land, so it's barely in the city of Corvallis. It has faced some opposition to doing additional density there. Fortunately, that opposition has waned recently, and I think the fact that there's affordable housing being built is positive. But it's an issue I think that would need to be addressed in terms of siting a project like this. So. And I will say that we overpaid for the land. I think the developers knew that they had a commodity on their hands that was they had it rezoned for multifamily, and I think they knew that it was priceless to some developers, and so we probably paid more than it was worth. But at the end of the day, there'll be some units built as a result. So, again, a suggestion would be if the county or city can come to the table with a development site, that again would look favorably in the eyes of the state as they're vetting projects for funding, is that this is really sourced by the county or the state with that support behind it. So, so yeah, again, Emily covered most of what I was going to talk about, just in terms of the programs we use, but that sort of sums up where we are.
Thank you. Nancy, do you have questions?
Darren, the project that you're talking about, where is that located? Is that the one on 53rd?
It is, yeah, 53rd and Country Club.
Okay. Well, that makes me just extremely happy to hear. I was on the city council when that went up for a zone change, and I was actually on vacation in Disneyland with my family during the vote, and it got voted down by one vote, and I came home, and I didn't like that, and I used my vote to overturn staff's findings, and Mayor Traber broke the vote, the tie, and so the zone change moved forward, but I got a lot of hate emails, mean comments, phone calls. So what you say about the opposition, I mean, that is really real. But just hearing that there is something now, a project moving forward, that just makes it all worth it. So that's great to hear.
Well, thank you for the vote.
Okay, so I really thank you both for coming to us with description of the challenges. So, and you've been very clear about how the county might play a stronger role. And one is with our supportive services and the capacity we have through our behavioral health and health staff. And the other, and through advocacy, clearly. But the other is on the financial side. And I'm hearing you very clearly that it would help if we were to put money into the project or to help find land or acquire land and then contribute that as part of the project. I am not at all familiar with the way property tax exemptions are used, and that's not something we've done much in this county. But I know that's another tool in the toolbox that we could learn more about. Be happy to learn more about it. So let's see. And then the project-based rental assistance. I know that, as you heard, we just spoke to Donna Holt about that, and it's very difficult to carve out vouchers out of their current stream when they are all currently utilized. But if we're ever going to increase the inventory of housing, I think it's going to be an essential ingredient. So I think we also have work to do at the federal level to increase the number of vouchers or to help support state programs to provide state vouchers. Again, we also rely on you all to help us keep an eye on what's going on in the legislature. We will be joining the Oregon, the Housing Alliance. And we look forward to joining that conversation around the table and contributing to the legislative agenda, but it's always during session overwhelming to try and keep up with everything that's going on. That said, I think that what I'm trying to convey more than anything else is that we would like to be good partners. Let us know when you see opportunities. We will also let you know when we see opportunities, and we are really eager to make it possible for all of you to work together. I know that it's not always possible because the funding streams are competitive, but the more we can do for Benton County residents, the better. So that's where I would like to go.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you. And just one more thought to add on a piece that Darren said. That when we're competing for these state funding sources, especially the 9%, which is one of the biggest pots of funding, we are assigned, like Corvallis, for example, is assigned into a pool with 6 or 8 other cities that are sort of like-sized cities. And so that, like, it would be possible to do a pretty nuanced comparison of the kinds of resources that those cities are offering and the like average cost per unit or average subsidy requests per unit that are coming in from projects in those cities. And really what we're trying to do is position a project coming in from Corvallis to be just a little bit better than them, which means we need resources that are just a little bit better. So we could help with that kind of research and put together a community plan of just what we think it's going to take for a local project to be competitive. Ditto for the rest of Benton County, which competes in a slightly different pool. So we could do that analysis and make some concrete suggestions about what level of local subsidy it might take.
That would be fantastic. And I know that our smaller towns, you know, whether it's Monroe or Philomath or Adair Village, are all also building like crazy. And there might be more opportunity outside of Corvallis that's not too far away. It's still less of a commute for people than coming from Lebanon or from Sweet Home or Eugene. So, yeah, that would be great, Emily. We would welcome that. Any other thoughts on, Donna, do you have anything that you would want to add to the discussion? Darren?
I was just going to add one thought too, as I mentioned this when I spoke to Andrea last. You know, faith groups have been a partner of ours on a few projects, not necessarily permanent supportive housing, but there are a few areas where we recognize that faith groups were sitting on a lot of land, and they've, in some areas, have really stepped up to the table to allow that land and offer up that land for developments like this. So I would say they could be a good partner. And if there's any faith groups out there that are interested in this kind of housing or working on a solution, that would certainly be an avenue to explore.
Yeah, I'm aware of that in the metro area. It's they've been a great partner for some of the organizations up there. I don't really know down here what the picture is.
I was just going to add, this is Donna, I was going to add that through the developments that we've done, that we've found the most rewarding and most successful are those that are done in partnership with other agencies, because there's more power in numbers, and we put our forces together as part of the community. And the tax credit exemption, housing authorities are automatically tax exempt when they're part of an entity of a development, and I know there are other resources for that too, but those are really key components of getting those points that Emily mentioned and even that Darren was talking about. So putting all the forces together can really help develop wonderful projects.
Thank you. That's good to know. So you are a valuable strategic partner in that sense, bringing that tax exempt status to the table. Let's see. I wanted to mention that we had a miscommunication with Andrea, and that's why she wasn't able to make it today. She's actually away on vacation, so I'm sure we will have other opportunities to hear from Corvallis Housing First, and we'll try to work them back into the schedule as we continue to have these housing conversations over the summer. And it's all complicated, but in some ways I find the permanent supportive housing less so. I hate to say that, just because if you think that the NIMBY forces are strong for permanent supportive housing, they're even stronger for transitional housing or for shelter. So we are looking to increase our resources locally across the spectrum of need, across the system. And we value all of your work as partners. So thank you.
And Van, can I just add, can I get up on my soapbox for a minute and just say thank you? And I just want to highlight how important all the work is that you guys do. And I am very supportive of housing. Anything that I can do to help, please let me know. If there's ever any ideas or questions, feel free to email me. Let me know what I can do to help. I know back in 2018, Benton County had the worst was highest in Oregon for income disparity and 5% in the nation. It's a real problem. So anything that I can do politically, please let me know.
Thank you both. Thank you for bringing us together for the conversation.
Well, thank you. Any other last words?
Just a big thanks again. I echo Emily's thanks.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been a good conversation, and I hope it won't be the last, and look forward to hearing about the kinds of projects we can come up with and that analysis of what that sweet spot is in terms of getting something across the line with Oregon Housing and Community Services. So appreciate it. We'll see y'all later. Okay, we have a hearing scheduled for noon, and the only item before that is the consent calendar. Shall we take a break until noon and then reconvene for the public hearing? Or would you like to
get a calendar now?
Pardon me?
Can we just approve the calendar now?
We could,
or we can take a break, whatever works. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's such a rapid piece of business that I don't think it makes much difference. Let's take a break until noon and start right at noon, and then move on.
Great.
I am going to give us just a moment for, I think Rachel Maddox-Hughes was also going to join us. There she is. Okay, we are back in session and picking up where we left off with the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And we will now open our public hearing in the matter of notice of intent to apply for a community development block grant. And we have Mary Otley and Rachel Maddox-Hughes with us today to present and move us forward.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon, Commissioners. We're here today to ask the county ask commissioners to approve the application for a community development block grant in the amount of $250,000. And this grant funding will support scholarships for K-8 students in rural communities to attend student programming. We're a little behind the 8 ball here, is that we should have had this done a couple months ago. But we're pushing forward, and I'm assuming, Rachel, you know, we've got people waiting for us to get this money out there. So a lot of bureaucracy goes behind the scenes with CDBG grants, and one of the things that held us up was the posting and actually drafting of the public notice. And so we've got there, and we will be meeting tomorrow to approve the minutes, because we have to have approved minutes as well. So that's what the emergency meeting tomorrow is about. So that said, is there any questions? We do have to read the public announcement. Is that right, Rachel? I'm looking.
Yeah, do you have a copy of it in front of you?
I do.
And do you have somebody to read out the Spanish piece of it as well?
I can do that.
Or I can, yeah, either one. I was going to offer, if you don't, I can do that as well. So just as long as it gets read in English and Spanish, we should be good, just to cross our T's and dot our I's. And just one quick additional piece. So this funding will be from July through December, because the idea is to help combat, you know, there's normally a summer learning gap that occurs in the best of situations, but we're going to have even more of that. So these scholarships will be able to be used during the summer, but then also that first part of the school year where kids are, you know, trying to get caught up. There's probably going to be a lot of struggles, and, you know, additional programming will help that.
And I just want to clarify something Mary said. Tomorrow will not be an emergency meeting. We're simply going to recess today's meeting and read tomorrow at 1:30. Mary, you're right. The board will get back together tomorrow, but it will just be a continuation of this meeting.
Thank you. I have a procedural question. Are we still reading the motion today, and then we approve the minutes tomorrow? Okay.
All right. I will read it in English, and I'll have someone else read it in Spanish for me. Benton County is eligible to apply for a 2020 Community Development Block Grant from the Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for emergency child care assistance to low to moderate income county residents. The state expects to receive approximately $13 million in federal funds during 2021 for grants to non-entitlement cities and counties for eligible projects. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive under the COVID-19 Impact Assistance Program for child and student care activities is $250,000. Benton County is preparing an application for a 2021 Community Development Block Grant from the Business Oregon for low to moderate student assistance for students residing in rural Benton County. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 100 persons, of whom at least 51% will be low or moderate income. A public hearing will be held by the Benton County Board of Commissioners at noon on June 22nd, 2021. All meetings will be conducted virtually via GoToMeeting. The meeting links are available at, and I'm not reading that part. The purpose of this hearing is for the Board of Commissioners to obtain citizens' views and to respond to questions and comments about community development housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with a community development block grant project and the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by June 16th, 2021 at 205 Northwest 5th, Corvallis. There, both oral and written comments will be considered by the Board of Commissioners in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disability. Please contact Teresa Farley at 541-766-6890 if you will need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the meeting. More information about Oregon Community Development Block Grants, the proposed project, and records from Benton County's past use of Community Development Block Grant funds is available for public review during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify Mary Otley, CFO, at 541-766-6767 or mary.k.otley at co.benton.or.us so that the appropriate assistance can be provided. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result from the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required or reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. That would be the English version.
Okay. I will read it in Spanish. Aviso público y aviso de audiencia pública. El condado Benton es elegible para aplicar a la beca Bloque de Desarrollo Comunitario 250, no, sorry, my numbers are not good, 2021 Community Development Block Grant de Business Oregon. La beca de Bloque de Desarrollo Comunitario viene del Departamento de Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano de los Estados Unidos, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Las becas se pueden utilizar para asistencia de emergencia para la ciudad de niños, para residentes del condado de ingresos bajos a moderados. El Estado espera recibir aproximadamente 30 millones en nuevos fondos federales durante el 2021 para becas a ciudades y condados sin derechos para proyectos elegibles. La beca máxima que una ciudad o condado puede recibir bajo el programa de asistencia de impacto COVID-19 para actividades de cuidado de niños y estudiantes es de 250,000. El condado Benton está preparando una solicitud para la beca 2021 Bloque de Desarrollo Comunitario de Business Oregon para baja moderada asistencia estudiantil para estudiantes que residen en el área rural del condado Benton. Se estima que el proyecto propuesto beneficiará al menos a 100 personas, de las cuales al menos el 51% serán de ingresos bajos o moderados. La Junta de Comisionados del Condado de Benton llevará a cabo una audiencia pública al mediodía del 22 de junio de 2021. Todas las reuniones se llevarán a cabo virtualmente a través de GoToMeeting. Los enlaces para las reuniones están disponibles en www.co.benton.or.us meetings. El propósito de esta audiencia es que la Junta de Comisionados obtenga opiniones de los ciudadanos y responda a preguntas y comentarios sobre desarrollo comunitario y necesidades de vivienda, especialmente las necesidades de personas de ingresos bajos y moderados, así como otras necesidades en la comunidad que podría ser asistida con una beca del Bloque de Desarrollo Comunitario y el proyecto propuesto. Los comentarios escritos también son bienvenidos y deben recibirse antes del 16 de junio de 2021 en 205 Northwest 5th. La Junta de Comisionados considerará tanto los comentarios orales como los escritos para decidir si se aplicará. El lugar de la audiencia es accesible para personas con discapacidades. Comuníquese con Teresa Valle al 541-766-6890 si necesita alguna adaptación especial para asistir o participar en la reunión. Más información sobre las becas del bloque de desarrollo comunitario de Oregon, el proyecto propuesto y los registros sobre el uso anterior del condado Benton de los fondos de la beca del bloque de desarrollo comunitario están disponibles para revisión pública durante horarios de oficina. Se solicita notificación previa. Si se necesitan adaptaciones especiales, notifique a Mary Utley, directora financiera, al 541-766-6767 o Mary K. Utley, CO Benton ORUS, para que les puedan proporcionar la asistencia adecuada. No se prevé el desalojo involuntario permanente de personas o empresas como resultado del proyecto propuesto. Si el desalojo se vuelve necesario, se examinarán alternativas para minimizar el desalojo y proporcionar los beneficios requeridos razonables a los desalojados. Se reemplazará cualquier vivienda de ingresos bajos y moderados que se demolida o convertida para otro uso. Okay.
Muy bien.
So, slow. At this point, we need to ask whether there is any public comment. Anyone who wishes to speak or address us? Okay, hearing none. Are there any further questions for Mary or for Rachel?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to ask Genevieve to please note in the minutes that the notice was read both in English and in Spanish. Kind of dust in the wind if we don't put that in the minutes.
Yes, that was already added. Thank you, Vance.
Okay, at this point I will close the public hearing and I am ready for a motion.
I move to approve the application for a community development block grant in the amount of $250,000 to support students in grades K through 8 in Benton County.
Second. All in favor, signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. And as I understand it, we are also contemplating or have decided to move forward with one more CDBG grant proposal. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I will be shortly bringing to you guys another request for a public hearing that will get scheduled. It is to support transportation and storage costs for Linvent and Voucher and the pantries they serve.
Thank you. Look forward to that too. That one doesn't have quite as much time sensitivity, I don't think, but we need to get the money spent.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to item 6.1, discussion and decision to further extend the declaration of a state of an emergency with respect to COVID-19. Vance.
Sorry, I had to find where my microphone button is. So we talked about this ad nauseum for the last year and a half, and to use a phrase my dad said, God willing and the creeks don't rise, this will be the last time you see this in front of you. It is a request to continue the emergency declaration of Benton County as a result of the pandemic through September 30th. September 30th, I think, as you had heard a couple weeks ago, is the date that I believe federal HHS and other federal agencies have push their declaration too. Benton County, while we appear to be emerging from the tunnel that is the COVID pandemic, we're not yet out of it. It is our sincere hope and belief that by the time we get to September 30th, we will be past the pandemic. But in the meantime, the emergency declaration will provide the organization with two benefits. One is that if we are forced to spend funds related to the pandemic, or if we have an opportunity for reimbursement for funds that we may be spending in the next 2.5 months, emergency declaration will provide us the eligibility for reimbursement. So it gives us the opportunity, not a guarantee, just the opportunity that we could be eligible for funding reimbursement. The other thing it does is it provides flexibility to the organization in the event we need to take quick action, make a quick decision. Under the emergency declaration authority in our charter, the chair has the ability to make a decision as it relates to the emergency without the board's concurrence, so long as that decision is later ratified by the Board of Commissioners. So the emergency declaration, while I suspect a lot of people are going to be asking, do you really need it? It does provide us a safety net in the event something unforeseen pops up in the next couple of months in terms of funding or decision making. Last but not least is because the request is to continue the extension through September 30th, that will carry Benton County past the beginning of the 21-22 K through 12 school year, which who knows what could happen at that point in time. And I know, Nancy, you're thinking, please nothing. And of course, we've got OSU students coming back the latter half of September. So two fairly significant events for populations that may not have the highest level of vaccinations that we'd like to see. So emergency declaration would get us through September and certainly give us strong footing for understanding what we're facing heading into the fall. And then last but not least, you can always come forward and decide, you know what, Vance, it all sounds good. It's August 15th. We don't need it. You can terminate it. So you can always terminate these things as you please.
Thank you. For me, I have to say that I am supportive of this measure, but reluctantly. I would prefer that we be able to put this pandemic in the rearview mirror completely and discard the emergency declaration as a tool. But when it comes to both the fiscal solvency of the county and our ability to go for reimbursements and that safety belt of having the ability to make rapid decisions if we do indeed see the emergence of Delta variant, or maybe, I don't know what the next one is, Epsilon variant coming along, and really need to take swift action. This provides the opportunity to do that. So this is a strange emergency, but I do believe that we need to use all the tools in the toolbox in order to keep us healthy, both physically and economically. Nancy, thoughts?
Yes, for all of the reasons that Vance very clearly laid out, I support it, and I move to adopt order number D 2021-052, extending the declared state of local emergency through September 30th, 2021.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And I promise, if I bring another one of these back, it'll be only because they're bringing it back kicking and screaming.
Hear you. Yeah. not something that it's not ordinary business. But we try to be as careful as we can. So the next item on our agenda is information sharing. And it's only the two of us, Nancy, and I don't have anything to share that's new. It's come up in the last couple of weeks. Do you have anything?
No, nothing burning enough to warrant everyone staying any longer.
Okay. With that, then, if there's no other business, then we are adjourned.
No.
Oh, no, we are not adjourned. We are in recess.
We are
I apologize.
recessed.
We are in recess until tomorrow, when we will reconvene.
And the link has been sent out for anybody who wishes to rejoin this current meeting. And the purpose for the recess is so that the Board of Commissioners can come back, review, and be asked to approve the minutes from the public hearing from today.
Thank you for catching me.
I'm your safety net.
That's right. We now stand in recess until tomorrow. So see you all.
Great. See everyone tomorrow.